Minister. Joining us right now are our political strategist, Susan Smith, Liberal strategist and principal of Blue Sky Strategy Group, Cole Hogan, a Conservative strategist, and George Sewell, former NDP Director of Communications, now principal at On Step Strategies. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
So, no surprise, getting a pipeline is a big priority for Danielle Smith, and you now have Alberta stepping forward as the major proponent behind trying to get a new pipeline built. Not a major corporation. 3 companies will be advising, but it is ultimately the Alberta government. Does this create more pressure on the Prime Minister to make sure a pipeline is part of a second tranche of national projects, Cole?
Sure. I think that's partly the reason why we saw this move. I think it's a good move in particular for a few reasons. One, I think for Premier Danielle Smith and the Alberta government, it addresses some discontent from, Albertans towards the Justin Trudeau legacy and, coming in and not seeing a pipeline happen right away. So I think this is the right thing for Danielle Smith to be doing. And, Danielle Smith did say, she repeated what Mark Carney said during the campaign. And the Liberals were very specific on this. And Carney himself said, we want to make Canada a leading energy superpower. So if that's going to happen, we're really going to have to push things forward. On terms of the debate between the premiers themselves or the premiers and the Prime Minister, we've already seen, that disunity happen. Doug Ford, I would say rightly, criticized Sean Fraser and the federal government for their moves on asking the Supreme Court to study if they should have the ability to limit the use of the notwithstanding clause for provincial legislatures. And on this, I think watching Danielle Smith and David Eby go back and forth, I see the Alberta government sharpening their pencil and David Eby perhaps playing a bit more to the provincial local politics in BC.
Okay, listen, we'll get to Premier Eby in a bit, because without a doubt, there's no way this pipeline is going to happen without British Columbia, because it is on the BC coast that Alberta wants to terminate this pipeline at. But does this create, Susan, more pressure on Mark Carney to deliver a pipeline in the second tranche of projects?
First of all, I want to give Premier Smith, I don't say this very often, some credit for a creative solution.
Mark the day and the time.
No relation. No relation. No, I think she's come up with a creative move to move a pipeline conversation higher up the list. I might take a bit of issue with the term proponent at the moment. The proponent is usually a commercial partner or someone who's going to see the project through to operation. And what she's come through with is $14 million to get things moving. And I think it's super clever. Is the project shovel ready? Is it as far ahead as the other 5 projects that have been named already, the major projects list, or the ones that could come by Grey Cup, I think was the Prime Minister's term? I'm not sure it's that ready yet, but if she can get it started, then maybe there's a corporation who's willing to make the multi-billion-dollar final investment decision to move on something like that. But that's after the consultation with the provinces and the municipalities and the First Nations communities. But she's opened the door to the conversation for sure. I don't think the Prime Minister's opposed. The one thing that Minister Tim Hodgson said and the Prime Minister has said in all the materials is there has to be a CCUS, carbon capture and utilization component to it. So I'm sure the Premier's open to building that kind of thing into it, and we'll have some interesting conversations about whether this is a viable project. It's definitely not on the list. I don't think it's there to be. It's not off the list. It's got a long way to go before it's on the list.
Okay, George, what do you think? Second tranche, not second tranche, the pressure to make that happen?
Look, the whole time Premier Smith has been saying there's a proponent coming, and public dollars does not a proponent make. This is still just her saying we want this pipeline, and there's still capacity within TMX. So if they want to get more oil through the pipe, they could. There's still room to get it to the coast in the existing pipeline, the one that Rachel Notley, NDP Premier of Alberta, made happen with the federal government. And this new pipeline, it's not going to happen. It's a dream of Danielle Smith's, but nobody else wants it. We have Imperial Oil laying off a whole bunch of workers in Alberta right now. Look, I'm not one of those New Democrats who says we should turn off the oil taps today. I don't believe that. I do believe in can make sure we have a transition for these workers and these jobs. But the fact is, the rest of the world is turning away from this kind of energy, and the customers aren't there, and that's why the proponent's not there, which means that we shouldn't put more public dollars into a pipe that no one's going to want anyway.
Okay, but is there a question of national unity on the line here? Because Danielle Smith, since Mark Carney's election, and Mark Carney talking about creating the Canada as an energy superpower for the world, conventional and new technologies, Danielle Smith has not been as oppositional to Ottawa as she was in the Trudeau era. Does this risk creating that rupture again if the Prime Minister does not add a pipeline to his priorities of national projects, Susan?
I don't think Danielle Smith's opposition to Ottawa has anything. The cyclical nature of that has to do with her cyclical electoral fortunes. That's, to me, what's going on in Alberta. Does she need to start kicking Ottawa to distract from over there? Canada, ruptures is a strong word. A bit of disharmony here and there, a bit of competition between the premiers and the provinces is nothing new in this country. I don't think we need to overread or overreach on that. The Premier of Alberta and the Premier of BC are going to have to sit down. All the adults in the room are going to have to sit down for big things to be built in this country. We would hope that common sense prevails, but dialing it up, it's always going to dial up at some point in the other. It's a bit like whack-a-mole. Who's cranky this week? At the moment, Premier Smith isn't cranky, but maybe she will be next week. Depends on what's going on at home, as far as I'm concerned.
Cole?
Yeah, I'll address two parts of this. I think on the private proponent side, like the mere appearance of Mark Carney doesn't all of a sudden instill confidence in the national resource sector. So they're looking at the past 10 years of the Trudeau Liberal government, and there's still a bit of a hangover there for Mark Carney in terms of Albertans and the way that they look at Liberal energy policy, Bill C-69, the tanker ban, the emissions cap. Like, these are things that have, sort of, I think, motivated private proponents away from projects like this. And I think here, at least, we're seeing the Premier of Alberta get the ball rolling. To Susan's point, I think that's going to happen in terms of the Premier of British Columbia and Alberta having that conversation about a pipeline like this. But these are the conversations we'll have to actually get Canadian energy moving and make it happen.
And she's just announced $14 million for feasibility studies. Like, there's still
It is,
no
yeah.
pipeline,
This is
right?
essentially putting the proposal to the office to consider as a major project. In terms of the implications of Ottawa not including it in the second tranche, George, any concerns there?
Look, I mean, I get it. Like, I get that they're trying to make all the premiers happy, but when your requests are unreasonable, you can't just bend and say yes. I mean, there's lots of other things that we could do. There's the National Energy Corridor we could talk about. There's electricity transmission between British Columbia and Alberta and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. There's lots of, they could invest in helping to, in renewables. Texas is investing massively in solar and wind, and Alberta is not. They were, and those companies have left. Some of those luckily stayed in Canada, but some of them have gone to other parts of the world. That's a problem. So I think, I don't think you bend to Danielle Smith just because she's asking for something when the thing she's asking for isn't reasonable.
Okay.
And I don't think it's going to make a second tranche. It's too soon to make the second tranche. The Prime Minister already said by November, that's when Grey Cup is, the second tranche.
Good,
but there's things like West Mid-Atlantic, Pathways Plus, Arctic Security. There's a whole bunch of things that are way more advanced. Just because you don't make it by Grey Cup doesn't mean you'll never make it on another list.
Okay, listen, I've got 3 minutes, so it's basically a minute to each of you then. Given the fact that Danielle Smith wants us so strongly willing to put Alberta in the lead on this, given that what we heard from British Columbia, Adrian Dix was just on the program, about their continued skepticism about this project, this good feeling Team Canada unity amongst the First Ministers that we have seen since the spring, is that about to come to an end? Just quick go around, Cole.
Sure. I think that this is just part of the natural national conversation. Alberta is going to be a big leading voice in this. I think that what Danielle Smith has done so far is she's speaking exactly to Albertans. I think I saw her on one of the Alberta Next town halls say, I sleep comfortably every night knowing I don't have to worry about the concerns of Toronto and Montreal. So in having this proposal out there, she's speaking directly to, the Albertans in the province who want to see projects like this go forward, and every respective premier is going to do the same thing. So Mark Carney will have to, the First Ministers meeting, whenever the next one is, it'll be the same old in terms of every province looking for what they want, and I think that's to be expected. But hopefully, energy can keep moving.
Okay, Susan.
When families get together at a wedding, they're usually well behaved and in a good mood, and in between, there's sometimes squabbling and stuff that goes on. I think, and I agree with you, the natural ebb and flow of confederation and provincial politics and federal politics means sometimes they're chirping, sometimes they're all at the same song sheet. COVID, everybody in line, then stuff happens as the world goes on. Issues with the U.S. and tariffs, pretty much aligned, and then,
So basically you're playing the honeymoon
way.
is going to come to an end.
Well, they always do.
Not in my marriage. George?
Yeah, I think the USM or like the Canada USMCA or Canada CUSMA. The CUSMA agreement is going to everything we know is Trump's coming after us hard on that, and so I think that's the time when hopefully the premiers are going to realize that we need to work together again to get those deals straight. I think right now times are tough. People are having a hard time making ends meet, and so premiers are trying to look to somebody else to point at to blame. So the prime minister is going to blame the premiers, and the premiers are going to blame the prime minister. But hopefully, at the end of the day, they can come together and get some solutions that actually help people out.
Okay, George, Susan, Cole, thank you very much. I was playing with my ring as you were saying that, just FYI. Anyways, thank you very much,
We
guys.
need all your secret sauce then.
Off camera.